Hello everyone, welcome to the classes. I hope everybody is doing well and everybody is fine. So as usual, we always begin our class with a positive thought. So before beginning our lecture, before beginning our class, we are going to start it with a very positive thought which says that the longer we delay, the more we pay. So as long as you have the habit of delaying your task, delaying your course, whatever the things you have decided that you have to do it today, you should be completing it today itself, so that it should not become a kind of burden for you for the tomorrow. So the more you delay, the longer you have to pay. Okay? So now in today's session, we will be talking about the exchange of gases. Today we are going to learn about what exchange of gases. Okay. So in our earlier classes, in our previous classes, we have learnt about the mechanism of breathing, how the inhalation, exhalation and all this process it actually takes place. We talked about the respiratory volumes and the respiratory capacities. So we have learned all this thing. Now from the mechanism of breathing, now we are moving towards the exchange of gases. We have seen the mechanism. Now the exchange of gases. So the exchange of gases, this exchange word, it actually means what? The exchange, it takes place between, first thing, between what? Between the environment and lungs, in which we have seen what? We have seen the mechanism of breathing, which we have covered in our earlier classes. Okay. In mechanism of breathing, we have seen the process of exhalation, or which we have referred as expiration or expiration, the process of inhalation or inspiration. Okay, so the exchange which we have seen between the environment and the lungs, we have seen the mechanism of breathing. In this, we have learnt about the inhalation or the inspiration, exhalation or the expiration. Okay, so all these things we have earlier learnt. Now, the second exchange which actually takes place between the lungs, or you can call it as a alveoli, the main part which is actually involved, alveoli, to blood, and from blood towards tissue. Okay, so the exchange which took place between the environment and the lungs, we have talked about it. Now we are going to learn about the exchange which actually takes place between the lungs or the alveoli, and from alveoli to the blood, and from blood to the tissue. And so let's talk about it. So before starting with the exchange of the gases between the alveoli and the blood, let me go back to this chapter itself, where we have seen that actually the lungs, the part which enters into inside the lungs, that is known as the bronchus. Okay, you must have seen the diagram also, you must have read about all those things, you are aware about this. So because it is given in the starting of the chapter, there is no need to tell you, but still I am just reviewing it or revising it so that you would be able to connect everything very properly, So in that way, let me begin with that. Bronchus region. Okay, this bronchus region, it is entering inside the lungs. Bronchus, from bronchus it is bronchioles. Bronchus gets divided into so many different branches, which is known as the primary bronchioles. This primary bronchioles, it again gets divided and differentiated into what? Into secondary and tertiary bronchioles. So the division of the primary bronchioles towards the secondary and the tertiary bronchioles, and the secondary and the tertiary bronchioles, it again gets divided into what? The terminal bronchioles. Okay, all this you are aware, but I am just revising it. Okay, so the terminal bronchioles, it again gets differentiated into the structure, or you can call it as a bag-like structure, which is very thin walled, okay, and vascularized, known as what? Let me highlight it with the red one so that you will come to know that this is going to be the part of discussion. Alveoli. Okay. So the bronchus gets divided into the primary bronchioles. Primary bronchioles is further get differentiated into the secondary and the tertiary bronchioles. The secondary and the tertiary bronchioles, it gets divided into the terminary bronchioles. The terminal bronchioles, it gives rise to a bag-like structure which is known as what? Alveoli. Okay. So now this is the part about which we will be talking in our classes, alveoli, in which from where the gas actually gets exchanged from this alveoli to the blood and from blood towards the tissue. Actually, there is, we will be discussing about its structure, how actually the exchange takes place. So let's begin our discussion with alveoli. Okay, so alveoli, it is actually what? It is the primary site. Means what? The basic region, the primary site where actually the exchange of gases takes place. Where the exchange of gases occur. Okay, alveoli, it is a primary site where actually the exchange of gases takes place. Now this alveoli, it is, let me draw its image which is given in the NCERT and which may get asked in your exams also. Okay, so always try to always refer the diagrams which are given inside the NCERT, because questions are directly asked from the diagrams based also. Okay, no need to refer extra diagrams which are given in other books. So alveoli, let me draw its diagram. This is a alveoli, which is, it's looking like a bag-like structure. This alveoli, it is made up of irregular walled, very thin structure, and it is, it is single celled, made up of single layer. Okay, so this is the outer wall of the alveoli. So this is the outer wall of alveoli. Okay, so the outer wall of the alveoli, it is actually made up of a special type of tissue, the squamous epithelium tissue. So about the squamous epithelium tissue, let me write it down first, so then I will be explaining you all about it. So in your book, it is written as the outer wall of alveoli. It is mentioned as what? The squamous epithelium of alveoli. Okay, squamous epithelium of alveoli. Now, if I will be asking you about the epithelium tissue, you must have learned in your previous chapters, which is given in the structural organization of the animal. So in there you must have learned about the epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue, actually, epi word means what? The upper layer. Epi means what? Above. Okay. So the epithelial tissue, which is responsible for what? Actually, this squamous epithelium, it is a specialized kind of tissue which is only found inside, inside the layer of the blood vessels, and inside what? Inside the air sacs of the lungs, which is the air sac of the lungs means what? The alveoli. So it is mainly present in what? Inside the lining of the blood vessels, and inside this alveoli, inside the cavity of the alveoli. So the squamous epithelium of the alveoli, which forms what? Outer wall of the alveoli. Okay. Now this squamous epithelium of alveoli, it is divided into two types of cells, type 1 and type 2. This type 1 is mainly responsible for the exchange of gases, and type 2, it is responsible for secreting a fluid known as surfactant. It is called as surfactant. Okay. So if you will ask me that where this fluid is, it is actually present. This fluid is actually layering the alveolar cavity. Okay, so it is present here inside this alveolar cavity, which is secreted by what? Secreted by the squamous epithelium of the alveoli. Okay. So these two, the type 1 and the type 2 of the cells, type 1 is responsible for the exchange of the gases, and type 2 is responsible for secreting a fluid surfactant. Okay. So now we have seen the outer wall of the alveoli, which is squamous epithelium of alveoli. Then this squamous epithelium of alveoli, it is surrounded by what? It is surrounded by so many blood capillaries. Okay. It's surrounded by the blood capillaries of the alveoli. These are the red blood cells which is moving inside this capillary. Okay, so this is the blood capillary of the alveoli. So this is known as the endothelium capillary of alveoli. Okay, so the first layer is the squamous epithelium of the alveoli, second one is the endothelium capillary of the alveoli, and in between this outer wall of the alveoli and between the blood vessels, there is a membrane which is present in between them, which is known as the basement membrane. Okay, it is present in between the alveolar wall and between the blood vessels. This is known as what? The basement membrane. This basement membrane, it is having a very different feature in comparison to the squamous epithelium of the alveoli and endothelium capillary of the alveoli. So the basement membrane, it is actually acellular, means what? It is not made up of any cell. It is actually made up of collagen, etc. Okay, collagen and so many other things. So the first thing, squamous epithelium of alveoli, then basement membrane, and then endothelium capillary of the alveoli. So all these three, they together form what? They together form the diffusion membrane. Okay. So this is, let me come back to the alveoli. It is known as the alveolar cavity. Alveolar cavity. See, inside this alveolar cavity, the oxygen enters, and through this cavity, the carbon dioxide get away. Okay, so this is the layer of the alveoli. Then we have seen the basement membrane, and we have seen the endothelium capillary of the alveoli. Now let's talk about mainly these three parts which are responsible, which are together known as what? The diffusion membrane. Okay, so the first one we have seen, epithelium of alveoli, basement membrane, and the third part we have seen about the endothelium of capillaries. Okay. So the epithelium of the alveoli, basement membrane and the endothelium of capillaries, they together constitute what? They together form the diffusion membrane. Means what? This is the place where actually the diffusion takes place. So diffusion, they are together known as the diffusion membrane. Okay, these three regions are the place where actually the process of diffusion, that is the exchange of gases between these three layers and blood and tissue actually takes place. So togetherly they are known as the diffusion membrane. If you will see, actually, they have they are very thin. So their thickness, if we will, let me write it down. Their thickness together is 0.2 millimeter. It is just 0.2 millimeter thick. Okay. Now, we will see it actually how the process of the diffusion takes place. So we will be talking about the diffusion membrane, diffusion. Okay. So the diffusion, the process of diffusion, it actually depends upon what? It actually depends upon first thing, which is pressure gradient. Okay, so the rate of diffusion, it depends upon the pressure gradient, or we can call it as a concentration gradient, that is from higher concentration to lower concentration. Concentration gradient. And second important thing is solubility of the gases. So the rate of diffusion, it depends upon the pressure gradient, solubility of gases, and the third thing is thickness of the membrane. So earlier I have said you that it is made up of very thin layer, which is 0.2 mm, just 0.2 mm thick. So you can see that how thin that layer is actually made, so that the gases like the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, they can actually pass through very easily. Okay. So the third thing is thickness of membrane. The rate of diffusion. So the rate of diffusion, it actually depends upon the pressure gradient, that is a concentration gradient, then the solubility of the gases, and the third is the thickness of the membrane. Okay, in pressure gradient, now one by one we will see that how actually this pressure gradient, solubility and the thickness, they are working. Okay, so the first thing we will see the pressure gradient. Let me raise it out. Okay, pressure gradient. What is the role of it and how does it work? Okay, in the diffusion. So the pressure gradient means what? We have already seen that in the mechanism of breathing, we have seen that actually the movement of the gases, whenever we are talking about the movement of the gases, it always moves from the higher pressure gradient, from the higher concentration level towards the lower concentration level. So from higher pressure towards the lower pressure. So the pressure gradient means what? From high pressure towards the low pressure, high pressure to low pressure, or the high concentration towards the lower concentration. Okay. So let me tell you that how actually, in number, what is actually the amount of the pressure which is exhibited by each of the gases. So if there is a term which is mentioned in the NCERT, which is partial pressure. Partial pressure. What is partial pressure? Partial pressure means what? It is the pressure which is actually exerted by that particular gas in the mixture of gases. So what is partial pressure? It is the pressure exerted by a particular gas in mixture of gases. Okay, so the pressure which is exerted by a particular gas in the mixture of gases, that is known as the partial pressure. So when we say that the pressure which is exerted by the oxygen, how we will write? The pressure P which is exerted by the oxygen, that is a pressure P exerted by the oxygen, it is written as PO2, and the pressure which is exerted by CO2, it is written as PCO2. Okay. So it is when we say the partial pressure, actually we are not talking about the whole pressure, we are talking about the single pressure, that is pressure which is exerted by the single gas, that is the oxygen and the carbon dioxide alone. Okay. So this is partial pressure. Now we will see that how actually this, what is the number, what is exact pressure which is present inside the lungs, inside the alveolar cavity, and the pressure which is present in the atmosphere, in the oxygenated blood, in the deoxygenated blood, inside the tissues. Okay. So let me draw that table for you. So it will help us to clear out the doubts also. So the pressure, oxygen and the carbon dioxide. Okay, the oxygen in the pressure of the oxygen in the atmosphere, pressure of the oxygen in the in the alveoli, in deoxygenated blood. I will write it short, and oxygenated blood. And last one is tissue. This table which is given in the NCERT, it's a very important table, not just for your exams actually, but it is very beneficial to understand the whole concept of the diffusion. When I will tell you each number and when you will learn about it, you will feel so fantastic that actually, this table has made our job very easy. We will come to know it. Let me draw it fully first of all, then I will explain you. Okay. Now, see, the pressure which is exerted by oxygen in the atmosphere, that is the pressure of the oxygen in the atmosphere, it is 159, and the pressure of the oxygen inside the alveoli is 104. The pressure of the oxygen inside the deoxygenated blood is 40, and the pressure of the oxygen inside the oxygenated blood, means what, the blood which is filled with oxygen, it is 40, it is 95, and the pressure of the oxygen inside the tissue is what? It is 40. Pressure of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is 0.3, and the pressure of the carbon dioxide inside the alveoli is 40, deoxygenated blood 45, oxygenated blood again 40, and inside the tissues it is 45. Okay. So as I have earlier mentioned that this table will help you to understand the concept, let me explain you very clearly that how actually this table is helping you to understand the concept. Now, as I have told you that diffusion takes place from what? From higher concentration towards the lower concentration. Okay. So, ऑक्सीजन का प्रेशर एटमॉस्फेयर में, ठीक है, ऑक्सीजन का प्रेशर कहाँ पर, एटमॉस्फेयर में क्या है, 159 है, मीन्स व्हाट, यहाँ मैं लिख देती हूँ, लेट मी राइट इट डाउन सो दैट यू विल अंडरस्टैंड इट बेटर. 159 मीन्स व्हाट, हायर प्रेशर है, ओके, in comparison to what, alveoli. So the movement of the oxygen will takes place from where, from the atmosphere towards the alveoli. Why? Because here higher pressure is present from atmosphere towards the alveoli, that is where the region of lower pressure. Okay, so from higher pressure, that is from the 150, which is 159 in the atmosphere, 159 mm of Hg, and 104 mm of Hg inside the alveoli, higher pressure towards the lower pressure. So the oxygen moved from where, from the atmosphere towards the alveoli. Okay, so from alveoli it will move towards the blood, okay, where there is a lower pressure, and then from blood towards the tissue. Okay, so this is with this diagram, this table is actually helping us to understand it how actually the gases move from lower pressure gradient towards the higher pressure gradient, sorry, higher pressure to lower pressure, higher pressure से low pressure की तरफ किस तरीके से ऑक्सीजन का मूवमेंट होता है. मतलब अगर एटमॉस्फेयर में 159 है, मतलब ज्यादा प्रेशर है इन कंपैरिजन टू व्हाट, एल्वियोलाई, तो यहाँ पर फ्रॉम हाई प्रेशर से लो प्रेशर मूवमेंट हुआ, देन फ्रॉम एल्वियोलाई टू द ब्लड, ऑक्सीजनेटेड ब्लड 95 मीन्स व्हाट, यहाँ हायर है, यहाँ लोअर है, तो यहाँ से एल्वियोलाई से मूव कर गया कहाँ, inside the blood and from blood towards the tissue. Same here, carbon dioxide. Now if we will see, carbon dioxide का opposite है, you know how beautifully they have explained actually. यहाँ पर ऑक्सीजन का प्रेशर हाई है, तो कहाँ से मूवमेंट हुआ? एटमॉस्फेयर टू एल्वियोलाई, एल्वियोलाई टू ब्लड, ब्लड टू टिश्यू. अब कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड का जो प्रेशर है वो एटमॉस्फेयर में ऑलरेडी कम है, यू नो इट इज 0.3, मतलब क्या? लो प्रेशर है. यहाँ पर है लो प्रेशर और यहाँ पर क्या है? हाई प्रेशर है, मतलब क्या? एल्वियोलाई में प्रेशर हाई है, तो मतलब यहाँ मूवमेंट इस तरीके से हो रहा था. द मूवमेंट was actually taking place in this way, but here the movement will be in opposite direction. In this way means what? From alveoli towards the atmosphere. So that is the process where we are calling it as expiration or exhalation. Okay, from alveoli towards the atmosphere. From oxygenated blood, that is from tissue towards the blood, and from blood towards the alveoli. So this is the movement of all about these gases. This table explains us all this thing. Okay, so this was all about it. We learned about the pressure. Now we have seen that how actually the exchange takes place from higher pressure to lower pressure. Now there is a diagram which is given in the NCERT book, which is very important, which will help us to understand it very perfectly. Let me draw the diagram for you. Suppose this is our alveoli. It's just like a, you know, मटके की तरह इसको show किया गया. Just take it as a in that way. Alveoli. This is our alveoli. Now ये alveoli, now inside this alveoli we have what? The pressure of oxygen, which is how much? The pressure of oxygen is inside the alveoli. It is 104 mm of Hg, and the pressure of carbon dioxide is how much? 40 mm of Hg. This is where we are talking about the alveolar cavity. Okay. Now from alveolar cavity, now let me draw the heart. If suppose it is a heart, okay, having two chambers. Okay, suppose this is our heart. Okay, now it is connected in this way. Let me complete the diagram, so then I will explain you, because you will not come to know actually what I am trying to draw. Here it is tissue. Okay. Sorry. In this way it is mentioned. Okay. So this is the alveoli. Now this is our heart. Now this is what? This is pulmonary artery. This is pulmonary vein. Okay. This is what? Systemic vein. And this is our systemic, or we can call it as just artery. Okay. And this is tissue. Okay, now let me explain. This pulmonary artery, actually what it is doing, it is having the job of what? It is let me write it here. Pulmonary artery, pressure, and pulmonary vein, arteries, and the tissue. Inside the tissue, carbon dioxide is given out and oxygen is taken in. Okay, so the pulmonary artery, it is responsible for what? It is responsible for responsible for giving away all the deoxygenated blood. Means what? The blood which is rich in carbon dioxide. Okay, so this blood, from this pulmonary artery is taking away the gases from heart, taking away the blood from heart towards where? Towards the alveoli, where actually the carbon dioxide will be released inside the alveolar cavity. Okay, so here we will see inside the pulmonary artery the partial pressure exhibited by the carbon dioxide, it is 45 mm of Hg. Okay, and in the pulmonary vein, which is responsible for what? It is responsible for bringing the oxygenated blood from the alveoli towards the heart. Okay, so the oxygenated blood from the alveoli towards the heart. From the alveoli towards the heart. Okay, so this is the systemic vein which is responsible for what? Which is responsible for taking away the carbon dioxide which is present inside the tissue towards where? Towards the heart. So it will take away what? The carbon dioxide rich blood. Carbon dioxide rich blood from the tissues towards the heart, and arteries are responsible for taking the blood from the heart towards where? Towards the tissue. So it is responsible for taking the blood from heart towards tissues. Okay, arteries are responsible for taking the blood from the heart, which is rich in what? Which is oxygenated blood, rich in oxygen, from the heart towards the tissue. Oxygen rich blood will come, and here in this way, here the systemic vein, where the carbon dioxide rich blood which will come towards the tissue, they will take away from the tissue towards the heart, and from the heart towards the alveoli, and it will get released out. Okay, so this is the whole diagram which is explaining and which is talking about all these things. So in this chapter, in this topic, we have learnt about the exchange of gases. We talked about that how actually the exchange takes place. We talked about the diffusion layer, the diffusion membrane, which is made up of three very important layers. First, we have seen the epithelium of the alveolar cavity, or the alveolar layer, and then which was made up of what? The alveolar wall, it was made up of epithelial layer, and then we have seen the endothelium of the blood capillaries, and then the basement membrane. So all these three together, they have contributed towards the diffusion of the gases. So this was all about, we have learned mechanism, we learned about the exchange of gases, how actually the exchange of gases took place. In exchange of gases, we have seen that the pressure which was exerted by each gases, which is known as a partial pressure, we have seen. Okay, so this was all about it. I hope you understood. I hope you enjoyed the class. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Have a very good day.